People have been asking, what's Martin been up to this summer? He hasn't been doing very many videos. Well, I'll try to explain that this morning. I'm down here on the river bottoms. I've had a project going on for the last, well, 5 weeks now. And it's been thinning trees. Now it ended up, I measured it the other day, and it's an 18-acre plot of trees that were planted to hardwood trees 20 years ago. And it's in what's called a CP23 program with the government, with the farmers paid to plant these trees. But to keep the process going, we needed to go in and improve the stand, and we needed to open it up so that the good trees, the oaks, the hickories, and the walnuts can grow nice and strong, and get rid of some of the silver maple. A lot of cottonwoods have come in there on their own. They're not supposed to be there, and they tend to grow right next to the oak tree. So I'm going to show you in there what this project's involved. But I think today, with 2 more hours, I think I can finish it up, and then we'll make 48 hours of this fun in the woods. What the project involved is, when I come across trees like this honey locust, we don't want honey locust anyway. They're a gnarly thorn-filled tree, and they'll tend to grow up, and they'll grow faster, and then they'll shade out the good oak trees. So the idea is we come along and we cut down any of the trees. Like you can see, this locust is cut last week, so the leaves are turning a little different color. They're browning up, and then it releases these nice oak trees to have good daylight and grow nice and straight and tall. These honey locust trees are a real nasty thing to mess with. You can see the thorns on there. They are so sharp that they'll go right through a neoprene boot without any, or the sole of a neoprene, you know, the good hard sole. They'll go right through it up into your foot or into your fingers, into your leg, and they have a real tendency to want to fester up too there. I don't know what kind of poison is on them tips, but they can tear you up. So you need to be careful as we cut. I don't let one fall on me or get into too much of a personal contact with them. This is a good example of the goal of this project. Is as I look through here, I see this nice oak tree right in the center, and just in the background a little bit there's 2 more oak trees, but they are being overshadowed literally by this big willow tree that was part of the planting process. Now what I want to do is I will cut out most of this willow tree with the goal of dropping the limbs so I don't harm any of the oaks. Well, that didn't go perfectly, but I got the job done, and now before I drop a limb on this camera, I got to move it out of the way, and then I'm going to take at least 1 more big limb off there. Then I think we'll be able to move on to the next little spot. Obviously there was something going wrong with that cut. And I thought, well, I just sharpened that chain before I left home. But then I remembered, yeah, I was sharpening that chain and I got a phone call. And I went back. I don't think I ever sharpened the other side. So I've gone back now, sharpened the other side of the saw blade. So we'll see if it works a little better now. There's still something wrong, but I got other saws back there. When you get this sharpening messed up a little bit, it doesn't want to cut through straight. As you get cutting these limbs out of the way and you start finding other things, like now here's an oak tree. It's been here for 20 years, but it's been so impacted by the shade of these bigger trees that it hasn't been able to grow. But hopefully now with some daylight, it'll take off and be a good tree. Then you look around and you get into some judgment calls. What are we going to save and what are we going to cut down? And here, behind the camera and here, I got some really nice oaks in here. A couple of really nice oaks in a row here. But this big sycamore tree, even though it's a nice big tree, they're after the oaks. So I'm going to have to take a couple of big sycamore out just for the good of the forest. And on the trees like this, we'll put this is a strong Roundup solution with some dye, so I know I treated the stump, but put a little ring around there. And that prevents most trees from growing back, otherwise it just comes right back up again with the good root structure. Now I need to get my aim. I don't want to mess up on this cut because I want to lay this sycamore right on top of the trunk of the other sycamore we cut. Make a nicer pile for the wildlife and the birds to nest in, so we get a little bonus out of cutting this, making these piles like this whenever I can. And also, laying right there, or standing there, there's a young hickory. Now there's not very many hickories in here, and I want to try to not nail it, but I might not be able to pull that one off. But the tree looks like it's going to go that way. There's not really any wind blowing this morning, otherwise I would have to enter the wind direction and the speed into my calculations here, but I think if I notch it, Martin thinks he can put it right over there, but we'll see. As I move along a little bit here, a few more smaller oak trees that having some interference, especially from this birch over here. I think I'll just cut a few limbs off and they'll have enough sunshine. Because there's so many good trees running down the line here, I cut this birch limb off really high so it wouldn't stretch out that far, but even then the tip got right over that little hickory I just saved. I'll have to go back over and pull it up out of the leaves again. But it should be okay now. We'll move on. As I said, we're trying to have some wildlife habitat here too when we're done. And there I got a real nice swamp white oak right there, but it's really being impacted by this big sycamore. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to girdle this sycamore and put a little of that Roundup in that right along the cambium layer. And I'll kill this tree, and it'll be good for woodpeckers and other birds looking for insects and things for years to come. So, and it won't be shading out our little oak tree, so we both win. Saw something flying through the trees there. I'm not sure what it was. Usually I cut all these grapevines off the oak trees. Of course, we don't want them growing up and killing the shading out the good oaks, but in this case I'm going to kill this tree anyway, and there's nice grapevine running up, a lot of grapevine foliage up there, so we'll let it just grow with all the sunlight it needs. And be a lot of grapes for the birds to eat later. So it's a little variety in the habitat. And after a nice round of that joy, I come back to the vehicle, get on my little stool. Normally I'd have some iced tea, but this morning, I don't know, I was just all discombobulated, I guess. Didn't only half sharpen the saw. I think it was Bonnie. She was in the kitchen making those world famous cherry pies, and I think I just got all messed up. I forgot to put the iced tea mix in here, so I got some good ice water, but not iced tea. I did remember though to snag a nice hunk of ice cold muskmelon out of the refrigerator. Tell you what, cutting out in the woods and then having a ice cold melon really hits the spot. This day has sure had its problems. We got a little rain 3 weeks ago, so even still getting a few mosquitoes down here, but not bad for this time of year. But they're starting to bug me a little bit. But you know, I mentioned Vonnie was making them world famous cherry pies this morning. Well, that's because I finally ran through the whole supply that I had laid aside for my spring trip to Minnesota cabin that never happened. Well, Bonnie's kind of a joke. She had a backup in the freezer for me. Here it is. This is a store-bought little cherry pie. So we're probably going to add this to the things just aren't going right today. Here's Martin with not a world famous Bonnie's cherry pie, but store-bought. I better treat her nice tonight. Well. Oh, an update on the phantom beaver. Well, him and I have been getting along just great, and I've been able to keep a constant water level in this big slough, and now there's been a lot of these great egrets have showed up. They're out there fishing and getting things to eat, so the beaver deceiver and the phantom beaver, the project is going along very well.